Hey guys, we're taking our time tonight. The world outside has already slowed down. Yellow squares are fading in the windows of high-rise buildings. Someone will still be flipping through the tape. Someone will be late for the last tram. And you are already lying down, feeling your body slowly becoming heavy. Silence and the echo of the day are mixed in the air, and it is time to surrender to philosophy that sounds like a lullaby, but let's be honest, you would probably never last. A whole night alone with your thoughts without any distraction. A person would simply crumble under the weight of their own ideas. That is why we are looking for the words of Plato, Seneca, or Buddha. They become soft pillows for the mind. So, before you settle down, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I am doing here. And I will be glad if you write in the comments where exactly you are listening to me now and what time it is. This will create our own night map of the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for a quiet background hum, and let's dive into today's journey together. You notice how your breath settles into a slow metronome. 4 counts in, 6, out, and the mattress receives your spine like a patient shoreline. The room is a soft aquarium of shadow. Somewhere a neighbor washes a cup. Water clinks like a distant bell. You think of the person you want to be, calm under pressure, quietly, decisive, immune to the whiplash of other people's moods, not a statue, not a robot. Just someone whose nervous system doesn't sprint every time a notification meows. If calm were an app, you'd probably be ignoring the update later, and yet here you are, finally installing it with your breath. The ideal you imagine is not gifted to the lucky. It is grown like a garden, less fireworks, more compost. Strong character, the kind that doesn't rattle, is not a sudden windfall, but a ritual of tiny choices performed even on unremarkable Tuesdays. You've met people who glow with that stability. They listen without fidgeting. They choose without drama. They know when to act and when to wait. They aren't born on mountaintops. They just kept showing up for themselves, even when the weather inside their head was scattered thoughts with a chance of self-doubt. A common fact, tucked somewhere between museums and your old high school notes. A Roman emperor kept a private notebook during hard years of war and plague. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself in the margins of his own life, practicing steadiness, the way a musician practices scales. Historians still argue whether those pages were meant for anyone's eyes, but you can almost feel the wax tablets, the lamplight, the honest tone, not performance. Practice. Practice is what you're doing now. Your body sinks. Your shoulders melt a few millimeters. Your jaw unlocks like a door left on the latch. You rehearse being unbothered, not numb-aware. You let the day scroll past, as if your mind has thumbed to the end and decided, enough doom. The joke is that strength looks boring from the outside. No cape, no dramatic entrance, just you saying no to the second dessert of outrage and yes to a quiet, useful action. Like Joe Quan. You don't need a bat signal. You need a bedtime. You build it with micro-rituals. The glass of water you drink before coffee. The 3 minutes you stand at the window, watching the city breathe. The promise to leave your phone exiled on a chair while you do the first hard thing of the morning. The funny part, none of this is cinematic. If there's a soundtrack, it's your neighbor's washing machine and your own patient exhale. Light joke too. Askers do not yet have a category for best supporting habit in a leading life, but they should. Quirky history likes to tap the glass here. Medieval monks kept night stairs, stone steps reserved for slipping from dormitory to chapel in the dark, bare feet and guttering candles, to chant the night office long before dawn. Imagine their breath in that chill corridor. The simple discipline of showing up while the world slept. You don't need a cloister to borrow the principle. Your night stairs might be the short walk from bed to a mat on the floor where you stretch, or from your scrolling thumb to the lamp switch where darkness quietly wins. This is the first secret. You are training your nervous system, not just your schedule. When you decide to be the person who follows one small rule, 1 glass of water, 1 page read, 1 minute of quiet, you teach your brain a friendly story about who you are. Strong character isn't marble. It's wet clay you keep returning. 2. Smoothing fingerprints, carving a line, letting it dry, and softening it again. Sometimes it cracks. That's fine. Water exists. Try again tomorrow. Light joke 3. If perfection calls, let it leave a voicemail. You also learn to be suspicious of grand mood swings. Motivation is a party guest, loud, glittery, unreliable. It arrives late, leaves early, and forgets its jacket. Discipline is a neighbor who waters your plants when you're away. They are not as charming, but your plants live. Tonight, lying here, you're deciding to trust the neighbor. You practice accepting quiet wins. You turned off one light earlier. You picked one thought to escort to the door. You thanked your body for carrying you to this bed without filing a complaint with a second historical breadcrumb just to anchor the softness with something real. In many monasteries, the night bell for the office of matins sounded around the 2nd or 3rd hour after midnight. People have been experimenting with the architecture of attention for a very long time. The monks weren't optimizing, they were aligning. You, modern and glowing slightly in the blue aura of your phone, can still do the same. Align one thing with one value, and repeat it until your life begins to hum in that key. Awakening your character means noticing the difference between calm and collapse. Calm is active, it chooses where to place attention, like a lighthouse turning its face. Collapse is when you fall into the sea of whatever is loudest. You practice, right now, by picking one sensation, the weight of blanket on shin bones, and letting it be the metronome of your mind. Thoughts will queue up with clipboards and urgent vests. You may nod kindly and decline their meeting requests. There will be time tomorrow, or not. The world continues to whirl even when you do not spin with it. You also let tenderness in. Discipline without kindness becomes a brittle statue. Strength without warmth is a locked museum. Think of the emperor's notebook again. Private encouragements, honest corrections, a hand on one's own shoulder. Your version is softer. You did your best today. You'll do one small thing tomorrow. That is enough. Outside, a tram sighs at some late station. Somebody runs for it. Someone else lets it go. Both will get home. File away a small, odd thread for later, something to wink back to when we talk about routines. In ancient scriptoria, scribes sometimes doodled little animals in margins to stretch tired hands. Doodles as discipline. We'll come back to that when we teach your day to make room for small, reviving strangeness, the kind that keeps effort human. For now, your eyelids are heavier. Your breath is a tide. The character you want doesn't arrive as a stranger at your door. It grows under your skin like a slow, living root system. Not heroic, not headline worthy, but sturdy enough to hold you when the weather turns. Tomorrow you'll build another ring on the tree. Tonight you just practice being the kind of person who can be quiet inside their own life. You're still on your back, the room drowsy with that late night hush, and your mind tries to negotiate. Should I scroll a little more? Just 5 minutes, but you know better. You've tasted that hollow feeling after the endless scroll. The way sleep becomes sandpaper in your eyes. Tonight, you shift gears. Tonight, you think about the spark versus the flame. Motivation, the unruly teenager of self-improvement, shows up when it wants, puts on fireworks, and then wanders off to eat chips in the kitchen. Discipline, on the other hand, is the reliable old friend with a thermos of tea, showing up on rainy mornings, saying, "Let's go." No excuses. You remember those January resolutions. Motivation makes you buy the gym membership, maybe even fancy sneakers that glow like spaceships, and then poof, by mid-February, the sneakers retire as closet ornaments. It isn't because you're weak. It's because motivation is unstable. It spikes like sugar, then crashes like a toddler after cake. The real work of building a calmer, stronger you comes from discipline, which doesn't need mood swings to move forward. Think of it like a train, slow to start, But once it builds momentum, it doesn't care whether it's Monday morning or Wednesday night. A historical fact to drop into your dreamscape. The Great Wall of China, that endless dragon of stone, was not built in a burst of inspired energy. It took centuries, countless hands, and routines that repeated day after day. Motivation alone would have given up after the first hill. Discipline is what stacks stone upon stone, until the structure became visible even from space. Historians still argue whether the wall ever truly protected or mostly symbolized power, but either way, it stands as a fossil of discipline etched into the earth. You, lying under your blanket, aren't building a wall, but you are building something like it, your inner architecture. Each choice you repeat tomorrow, no matter how small, is another stone. You brush your teeth even when your brain protests like a lazy cat. You send the email even though procrastination whispers, tomorrow. These tiny actions are boring in the moment, but they accumulate, layering like bricks until one day someone says, wow, you're so reliable. And you think, no, I'm just stubbornly stacking. Motivation makes you crave novelty. The shiny app, the latest productivity hack, the Instagram quote written in elegant italics over a mountain background. Discipline yawns politely and says, cool picture. Now sit down and do the thing. Motivation is the sizzle of fireworks over the city. Discipline is the street lamp that never fails, humming on at dusk, even when no one claps. You need both, but the street lamp gets you home safely every night. A quirky bit of trivia to amuse you while you drift. In the early 20th century, some office buildings in America actually installed motivational music systems to keep factory workers upbeat. Think of it, tinny horns blasting cheerful tunes at 10 a.m. Historians chuckle about it now, debating whether it helped productivity or just made people fantasize about smashing the gramophone. Compare that to the quiet, invisible power of disciplined workers who simply showed up, learned the motions, and became masters without needing an anthem every morning. You feel this inside yourself. Motivation is fun. Sure, you like the rush. But it betrays you when you need it most on grey days, in long weeks, when everything feels like oatmeal. Discipline doesn't betray. It doesn't care if you're in the mood. It doesn't require Spotify playlists with names like Grindset or Focus 10x. It's just a soft inner whisper. Do it anyway. And when you do, even half-heartedly, discipline nods in approval, promising to meet you again tomorrow. You might laugh at how unromantic it sounds, but isn't there a comfort in that? Life already brims with drama, traffic jams, unexpected bills, relatives with questionable opinions at dinner. You don't need more chaos from your own habits. You need something boringly steady, like a lighthouse, that doesn't stop to ask whether the storm feels motivated tonight. It just shines, every evening, no excuses. Your eyelids sink heavier as you picture it, a flame, small but steady, not flickering with every gust of mood. You train yourself to be that flame, not the spark that startles and fades, but the ember that endures. Tomorrow you'll wake up, maybe groggy, maybe cranky, but you'll still do one thing. Glass of water, walk around the block, write 2 sentences, whatever brick belongs in your wall. That's how your character awakens, not in bursts, but in quiet repetitions. Remember, motivation is the weather. Discipline is the climate. Motivation will always fluctuate, like a playlist on shuffle, sometimes a banger, sometimes a dud. But discipline is the background beat, always keeping time, letting you dance, stumble, or nap, but never lose the rhythm completely. That's what you're falling asleep into now. Not hype, not adrenaline, just a slow, trustworthy pulse of habit. So you let go. You imagine that steady flame inside your chest, burning low, burning calm. You don't need to chase sparks anymore. You just need to tend the fire, one small breath at a time, until the room itself seems to glow with your quiet. And tomorrow, when the alarm whispers like a distant church bell, you'll rise not because you're motivated, but because you are disciplined. and that is how the flame survives. You've already seen the spark, you've met the flame, and now you're lying there thinking, what if discipline isn't a prison guard at all? What if it's actually your ticket out? People often imagine discipline as some stern teacher tapping a ruler on the desk, scolding you for yawning. But here, in this quiet, it begins to show its softer face. Discipline is not the bars of a cage. It's the key you use to unlock the door, the quiet structure that lets you move freely without being yanked around by chaos you breathe into, that thought freedom through structure, a paradox that tastes like chamomile tea. History drops by with a lantern. The Stoics, those sandal-wearing philosophers in ancient Rome and Greece, loved to talk about self-mastery. Seneca, for instance, reminded himself that freedom doesn't come from avoiding rules, but from living by the right ones. You picture him, scribbling away in candlelight, practicing the art of not being owned by impulses. The funny thing is, people misread Stoicism as emotional constipation, but really it's just discipline dressed as calmness. Historians still argue whether Marcus Aurelius's notebook of meditations was meant to be philosophy or just self-therapy. But the core idea remains: the disciplined life is the freer life. And in the East, Buddhist monks would sit 4 hours in meditation, not because it felt amazing every time, but because repetition was the point. The body aching, the leg asleep, the mosquito buzzing, it didn't matter. Sitting was practice. Practice was freedom. Quirky side fact: early Zen monks sometimes practiced sleeping meditation, where they tie their hair to a ceiling beam so they wouldn't nod off completely. Imagine dozing off and being yanked awake by your own top knot. Now that's discipline with a slapstick twist. You laugh softly, but the lesson sneaks under your skin. When you submit to rhythm, you stop negotiating with yourself every 5 minutes. No more, should I do it? Do I feel like it? Do I want to? The decision is already made. You're free to just live it. Think of it like brushing your teeth. You don't debate the philosophy of dental hygiene every night. You just brush. Discipline, repeated enough, becomes the invisible scaffolding of your days. And here's where the art shows itself. The artist doesn't stand paralyzed, waiting for inspiration to fall like a meteor. The artist sits down, sharpens the pencil, touches the page. The beauty emerges because the discipline clears the space for it. You, too, craft your character with this quiet brushstroke of repetition. Nobody claps, but your life fills with coherence, like a melody played every day until it hums inside you, even in silence. Think of a street at night. Without lampposts, you stumble, guided by accident. With lampposts evenly spaced, you walk freely, see where you're going, maybe even whistle. The lampposts are discipline. They don't shout, they don't cheer, they don't make motivational speeches. They just stand, humming with their steady light. Freedom isn't walking in total darkness, it's walking with guides you can trust. Another quirky historical snippet. In 17th century Japan, samurai practiced a ritual called koto, strict sequences of movements, repeated endlessly. Outsiders might have thought, what's the point of swinging your sword the same way 1,000 times? But the samurai knew, in battle, you don't want to waste time deciding. You want your body already trained, already free. The paradox. Again, the stricter the practice, the freer the response. As you breathe in the dim room, you realize discipline is like that kosa. It isn't suffocating, it's rehearsal for freedom. You don't practice saying no to dessert just to win a diet medal. You practice to prove to yourself, I'm not ruled by cravings. That's the art. Self-mastery painted in invisible ink across your everyday. You remember how it feels when you're carried away by impulse. The late-night binge watch that becomes sunrise. The angry text you regret before you've even hit send. The 5-minute scroll that eats an hour. Those moments feel like freedom in the moment, but taste like captivity afterward. Real freedom is waking up rested, not resentful. Real freedom is knowing your impulses don't own you. So you relax further into the pillow. Discipline is not the steel trap of duty. It's the hammock of consistency. It holds you while the winds of mood blow past. And yes, sometimes it squeaks, sometimes it requires repair, but it's there. And when tomorrow's chaos knocks on your door, you'll already have the answer. Sorry, I've got my rhythm. Your eyelids are heavier. Your breath is steady. Discipline isn't a punishment, it's the permission slip you write yourself to be steady, calm, unhurried. And that's the real art, turning repetition into liberation, transforming duty into serenity, like the monks with tied hair, like the Stoics with their notes, like the samurai with their kotoyu, too, are practicing tonight. Practicing the art of discipline, and in that art, you are freer than ever. The room is still heavy with silence, but in that silence you sense the quiet pull of transformation. Not the movie version, no dramatic thunderclap, no makeover montage, but the slow, invisible kind that starts somewhere deep behind your ribs. You've talked about discipline as freedom, you've imagined the steady flame, and now you realize that discipline isn't just about holding the line, it's about reshaping the whole map of who you are. Self-transformation begins with an uncomfortable truth. The you that drifts through the day is mostly a bundle of old stories. Hand-me-down rules from childhood, opinions glued to you by teachers, friends, random TikToks, or some ex who said, "You'll never change." These stories become identities, and identities become cages. Tonight, lying here, you feel those cages loosen just a little. You're not obligated to stay who you were at 16, or even who you were last week. Historians love to argue about identity. 2. Take the myth of the ship of Theseus. Philosophers in ancient Greece ask whether a ship that replaces all its planks over time is still the same ship. Some say yes, some say no, some shrug and ask for wine. You, meanwhile, are a ship, swapping planks every day, a thought replaced, a habit polished, a reaction retired. By the time morning comes, you'll already be a slightly different vessel, sailing through the night. But transformation isn't polite. It doesn't knock first. It starts with friction. Think of the caterpillar. It doesn't gently become a butterfly in some spark cocoon with cucumber slices over its eyes. No, it melts into goo, completely dismantles itself, then rebuilds. It's messy biology. And you, too, might feel like goo sometimes, confused, restless, questioning. But that goo is progress. That goo is the raw material of freedom, a quirky fact to keep you entertained while you drift. Some ancient mystics believed that mirrors were dangerous during transformation. Catching your reflection while your soul was in transit could confuse it. You can smile at the superstition, but the idea feels familiar. When you're in the middle of change, looking too closely at yourself can feel disorienting. Better to trust the process, even if the mirror looks blurry for a while. So, you take a breath. You picture yourself in that cocoon, dissolving a little, not in a scary way, but in the sense of letting old armor soften. The belief that you're not a morning person, the story that you always procrastinate, the label of being bad with money. They are not commandments, they're old graffiti on your ship's hull. You can sand them off, repaint, sail differently. Self-transformation means rewriting the scripts that once felt permanent. This is where discipline becomes alchemy. Every time you choose a different response, holding your tongue instead of snapping, stretching instead of scrolling, forgiving yourself instead of spiraling, you transmute the lead of old habits into the gold of freedom. You don't need lightning bolts, you just need patience. Alchemy, after all, was less about turning base metals into gold and more about turning messy human beings into wise ones. Historians still argue whether medieval alchemists truly believed in magic gold or just used it as metaphor. Either way, you are doing the real thing tonight. You've seen yourself cling to the past like keeping clothes that don't fit, just in case. But transformation means thanking the old you and donating it to memory. You don't erase your history, you compost it. The failures and awkward mistakes, fertilizer, the habits that held you back. Mulch, out of that, new growth comes. It's not glamorous, but it is organic. And yes, self-transformation can be lonely. Not everyone applauds when you start to change. Some people prefer the predictable version of you, the one who stays stuck, stays familiar. But here, in the low hum of night, you learn to let their discomfort belong to them. You're not betraying anyone by becoming freer. You're simply updating your software. And let's be honest, nobody should be running on a 2012 operating system anymore. So you soften into the pillow. You allow yourself to feel both the mess and the magic. Tonight you don't need a full butterfly moment. Tonight you just need to accept the goo phase, to smile at the friction, to understand that self-transformation is not an overnight delivery. It's the slow shipping of becoming. You don't track the package every hour. You trust it's on its way. And when you wake tomorrow, a little more patient, a little more centered, you'll be another plank along in your ship of Theseus, another brushstroke of alchemy. You'll still be you, but freer, lighter, softer, around the edges. Transformation is not about erasing who you were. It's about finally making room for who you are becoming. The air in your room is thick with stillness, almost like velvet stretched across the ceiling, and you feel the drift toward an even deeper quiet. You've wandered through sparks, flames, and cocoons, and now comes one of the strangest, most liberating lessons. How to care without clutching. Detachment, not the cold shoulder, not emotional exile, but a gentle loosening of the fist you didn't realize you were making. You can love, strive, act and still not shackle yourself to outcomes. Picture yourself holding a bird. If you squeeze, you harm it. If you let go completely, it's gone. Detachment is the middle ground. Hands open, bird resting, able to fly, but not forced. You're steady, you're calm. This isn't about apathy. It's about peace. A person who clings to every result is dragged around like a marionette, while the detached person walks upright, holding their own strings. History nods along here. The Bhagavad Gita, one of the core texts of Indian philosophy, urged warriors, thousands of years ago, to act without obsessing over the fruits of their actions. Do the work. Let go of the result. That's detachment in its purest form. Historians still debate whether this was meant as a call to spiritual transcendence or a very practical battlefield psychology hack. But the principle is timeless. Peace arrives when you stop demanding that the universe fill out your comment. Cards, quirky trivia for your drifting mind. In the 19th century, certain spiritual circles in Europe practiced letter burning. They would write out worries or attachments on slips of paper and toss them into the fire as ritual release. Imagine Victorian gentlemen nervously scribbling, "Stop thinking about that one dinner party," and then dramatically burning it. Slightly theatrical, but charming and oddly effective. Sometimes you need ceremony to remind your brain to let go. You feel the lesson as you lie here. Maybe you've spent too much time hitting refresh on situations you can't control, waiting for texts, craving recognition, gripping the steering wheel of life so tightly your knuckles hurt. Detachment says, loosen, let things unfold. You're still present, still responsible, still showing up, but you no longer drown in outcomes. You swim in effort, and the current carries what it would not think about the stress you've carried before job interviews, exams, first dates. The moment you shifted from "I must succeed" or "I'll combust" to "I'll just do my best and see." That's when calm returned. That's detachment. It doesn't remove desire. It removes desperation. It frees you from measuring your worth against a scoreboard you don't control. And isn't it funny how attachment to outcomes often backfires? You grip so hard, you choke performance itself. Athletes talk about playing loose, artists about getting out of their own way. You know this feeling. When you finally stop obsessing, the thing flows. Detachment is that invisible lubricant. Historical whisper. Zen archers in Japan trained 4 years, not just to hit the target, but to stop caring if they did. The master would say, release the arrow without aiming at the target. Paradoxical, yes, But the point was freedom. When the archer detached from outcome, the shot was truer. You can almost hear the creak of the bowstring in the midnight air. So here you are, learning to be the archer of your own thoughts. You draw the bow of intention, discipline, practice, effort. But when you release, you let the arrow fly without yanking its tail midair. You trust gravity, wind, time. You trust yourself enough not to meddle. The beauty of detachment is that it makes space for compassion. When you stop gripping outcomes, you stop gripping people too. You let them be messy, let them grow, let them disappoint without it collapsing your world. That's not coldness, it's kindness without chains. You still care deeply, but you don't need control. Your relationships breathe easier when your hands aren't squeezing. And lying here, pillow, pressed gently against your ear, you feel the relief. Detachment is like loosening a belt. After a long day, suddenly, the breath flows again. You don't need every plant to land. You don't need every effort to bloom. You'll plant, you'll water, you'll wait. Whatever grows, grows. Whatever doesn't, teaches. Your mind may try to protest, of course. But if I don't obsess, won't I fail? No. Detachment is not laziness, it's clarity. It says, I'll do the work, but I won't mortgage my peace. That's strength. That's mastery. It's what allows you to walk calmly, while others panic at every gust of wind. So as your breath deepens, and your body softens into near sleep, you rehearse detachment in miniature. A thought floats in, you observe, you let it go. Another whirring taps on your skull. You nod politely, you let it wander off. You're no longer the puppet of your mind. You're the quiet puppeteer, smiling, hands relaxed, strings loose. And tomorrow, when something doesn't go your way, a late train, a slow email reply, a plan derailed, you'll remember tonight. You'll breathe, release, and carry on. That's detachment, not withdrawal, but calm engagement without chains. You care, you act, and you let the bird fly free. The night holds you steady, the hum of quiet like a low blanket over the world. Your body is half dreaming, half listening, and now you wander into the science of it all. You've been told to be strong-willed as if it's some mystical superpower, but psychologists treat willpower like a muscle. Use it, train it, rest it, and it grows. Overuse it, exhaust it, and it wobbles like jelly. You don't need magic, you need reps, recovery, and rhythm. Imagine your brain as a little gym where neurons lift barbells. Every time you resist scrolling at midnight, every time you pick salad over fries begrudgingly, but still, you're curling the dumbbell of self-control. At first it shakes in your hand, but repetition steadies it. That's why building habits matters. They outsource some of the heavy lifting, so your willpower isn't bench pressing every decision like a rookie. A historical footnote drifts in. In the late 19th century, William James, the so-called father of psychology, wrote about the importance of habit. Noting that our lives are basically a mass of habits, he argued that if you train yourself to act with discipline, you free your willpower for the moments it really matters. Historians still debate whether James overemphasized habit as destiny, but you can hear the resonance tonight. Your character isn't built on rare heroic bursts, but on quiet daily repetitions, and the quirky fact your drowsy brain might find amusing. In early experiments on willpower, scientists actually had participants resist eating fresh-baked cookies while sitting in a room that smelled like cookies. Imagine being the poor test subject, staring at warm chocolate chips while filling out a doll puzzle. Those who resisted, they showed lower stamina afterward, as if their self-control had been drained. Self-control fatigue is real. You've felt it when you've had a long day of being good, and then find yourself face first in a pizza box at 11 p.m. But the good news, just like muscles, willpower can recover and grow. Sleep, nutrition, breaks, these are like protein shakes for your discipline. When you rest, your brain refills its tanks. When you eat balanced meals, your glucose levels stop seesawing like a toddler on a trampoline. You're literally fueling your capacity to choose well tomorrow. Right now, By lying here in the dark, you're recharging that willpower battery. You notice the rhythm of your breath, the steadiness. That rhythm itself is training. Meditation studies show that even focusing on your inhale and exhale strengthens the circuits of attention. Each time your mind wanders and you bring it back, it's like a mental push-up. Unlike push-ups, it doesn't matter if you're perfect. It matters that you keep returning. You can already feel the workout happening as your thoughts float away like soap bubbles, and you gently tug them back with a smile. Here's the paradox that makes you smirk in the dark. Willpower grows stronger the more you use it, but only if you don't abuse it. Like muscles, it needs rest. You wouldn't do squats until your knees begged for mercy, and then try to sprint a marathon. Yet we expect our self-control to handle emails, diets, social media temptations, and late-night decisions without a break. That's why routines matter. They automate choices, so your willpower isn't stretched thinner than cheap pizza cheese dot. And when you think of self-control, don't imagine it as grim self-denial. Think of it as steering. The willpower muscle doesn't scream no all day. It calmly turns the wheel toward what you've chosen already. You set your course in calmer moments, and then your self-control just keeps you pointed that way when the waves of distraction rise. That's freedom. That's peace. Another curious tidbit. Victorian-era schools sometimes train children's self-control with exercises, like sitting perfectly still for minutes at a time. It sounds silly now, but the idea was to teach young minds to resist impulses. Historians still debate whether this was effective or just a way to produce polite posture, but it hints at something enduring. We've always known self-control can be trained. Tonight you're doing a softer version, lying still, training your attention not to dart after every noise in your skull. And when you wake tomorrow, you'll notice little chances to flex that muscle. Skip the doom scroll before breakfast. Choose to walk instead of collapse onto the couch for a second. Resist one sugary craving, not all of them, just one. Each rep builds your strength. Each rep makes the next easier. That's how you slowly become the person who can trust themselves. You sigh into the pillow, realizing how kind this is. You don't have to conquer everything at once. You just have to give your willpower small, regular workouts, balanced with proper rest. You're allowed to fail, to wobble, to eat the cookie sometimes. What matters is returning, lifting again, flexing tomorrow. Self-control isn't rigid perfection. It's resilient persistence. So let your muscles rest tonight. Let your willpower sip on the quiet. Stretch in the darkness, recover in dreams. You'll wake with a stronger hand on the wheel, able to steer calmly through the chaos. That's the gift of self-control. Not a life of constant no, but a life where your yes actually means something. Your eyelids are heavier now, but your mind is still humming like a late-night cafe where the last few lights remain on. You've trained the muscle of willpower, and now you wonder where is it all headed. You don't want to build discipline for its own sake, like someone endlessly stacking Lego bricks without noticing the castle they're building. You need a compass, not just fuel. And that compass, tonight, is goals, but not the vague kind. You know the trap. I want to be happier. I want to be healthier. I should get my life together. These are nice bumper stickers, but they don't steer you anywhere. Without structure, they float around like soap bubbles, pretty to watch, impossible to hold. That's why you shape them. You give them bones. You turn them into smart goals, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound. It sounds clinical, like something a life coach with too many binders would say, but in practice it's magic. Imagine lying here thinking, I want to read more. That's the bubble. Now give it bones. I'll read 10 pages before bed, 5 nights a week. For the next month, suddenly the compass needle clicks into place. You can measure it, track it, even celebrate it. Your mind, which loves clarity, stops whining. You've built a direction instead of floating in a fog. A historical detour drifts into your room when explorers like Ferdinand Magellan set out to circumnavigate the globe. They didn't just say, let's sail somewhere nice. They set goals, routes, stops, timelines. And even then, storms and mutinies tested them. Historians still debate whether Magellan's obsession with reaching his goal blinded him to his crew's suffering. But the fact remains, goals give you orientation when the ocean looks endless. Without them, you drift. With them, you endure. Quirky little side note to amuse your sleepy brain. In the 1960s, a psychologist at Yale, Edwin Locke, started researching goal setting seriously. Some of his experiments involved students setting wildly ambitious essay targets. Turns out, the students who picked specific, challenging goals wrote better papers than the ones who just said, "I'll do my best." Your late-night essay writing self might groan at the memory, but it shows a truth. The brain loves targets, even stressful ones. You, stretched out under the blanket, start imagining your own compass. Maybe you want strength, not "I'll exercise more, but I'll do 20 push-ups after brushing my teeth." Maybe you want peace, not "I'll meditate someday, but I'll sit quietly 4 or 5 minutes before coffee." You set goals like breadcrumbs, guiding your sleepy self through the forest of habit. They don't have to be heroic, they just have to be clear. And here's the secret you smile at in the dark. Goals don't exist to impress anyone else. They're private coordinates. They whisper direction when motivation forgets your name. And yes, they can change. Ships alter course. You're allowed to replace a goal when it stops serving you. The important thing is not perfection, it's orientation. Think about the difference you've felt between drifting and directing. Drifting feels like scrolling endlessly, hoping for something to matter. Directing feels like opening a book, walking outside, calling someone you love because you decided. Goals shrink the overwhelming into the actionable. They shrink "be healthier" into "drink 1 glass of water before bed." They shrink "be smarter" into "read 10 pages." And the shrinking makes it manageable. You laugh softly remembering the times you made impossible goals. "I'll learn Spanish in 2 weeks," or "I'll run a marathon by next Saturday." That kind of ambition is like asking a toddler to carry a refrigerator. Cute, but doomed. Smart goals protect you from that kind of self-sabotage. They nudge you to start where you are, not where your Instagram hero is. Another history bite to soothe your drifting thoughts. Medieval cathedral builders often worked on structures they knew they'd never live to see finished. Their goal wasn't completion, it was contribution. Place a stone, carve an arch, trust the next generation to keep going. Your goals can work the same way. You don't need the final cathedral tonight. You just need to lay 1 stone with clarity. And the funny paradox: once you commit to a clear goal, you stop burning energy on indecision. You don't stand in the kitchen debating snacks for 20 minutes. You already decided. You follow the compass. That's real peace, not constant freedom to choose, but freedom from the exhaustion of choosing. So you breathe in, let your chest rise. Breathe out, let it fall. You picture your compass needle, steady in the dark, pointing you toward the person you're quietly becoming. Tomorrow, it won't demand fireworks. It'll ask for 1 small step in the direction you already chose. And when you take it, you'll feel that click of alignment, the rare joy of not drifting, but moving with purpose. You don't need the entire map tonight. Just a compass, just a whisper, 10 pages. 1 walk, 5 minutes. The little bones that hold your bigger dream upright. That's enough to carry you into sleep. The room has that syrupy thickness of night now, where sounds are muffled and even your thoughts seem to speak more slowly. You've sharpened your compass with goals, and now you're realizing something important. Goals only matter if you keep showing up. The problem is, you can't rely on motivation every morning. It's too moody. This is where routines walk in, dressed in their plain clothes, not glamorous at all but strangely comforting. Routines are the scaffolding that keep your days upright. You know the feeling of mornings without one. You roll out of bed late, scroll aimlessly, grab random food, drift into tasks with no rhythm, and by lunch you feel like you've already lost. Without routine, the day feels like a sock sliding off your foot, awkward and unsatisfying. With routine, It feels like a path already paved. You don't argue with yourself. You just step onto it. A historical detail drifts into the dim air. Benjamin Franklin famously sketched out his daily schedule in tidy columns. He asked himself each morning, "What good shall I do this day?" And each evening, "What good have I done?" Historians still argue whether he actually lived by that tidy chart or just liked the aesthetic of being organized. Either way, it shows the point. Routine is not about perfection. It's about orientation, about anchoring yourself before the waves arrive. Here's a quirky one for you. In the 18th century, some naval captains insisted on sea routines for sailors' set times for meals, work, cleaning because, without them, chaos reigned on deck. Imagine being halfway across the ocean with 200 men and no structure. Someone would probably start a ukulele cult by day 3. Routines weren't about micromanagement. They were survival. Your life isn't a warship, but without rhythms, the chaos creeps in all the same. Think of routine as automation for your best self. You brush your teeth at night not because you were inspired, but because it's coded into your rhythm. You don't debate it. That's the beauty. Every argument you avoid with yourself saves willpower for bigger battles. A routine is like a playlist on repeat. It might not surprise you, but it keeps you dancing. You feel it in your own body. The nights when you slip into bed around the same time, read a little, sip water, your sleep deepens, your mind softens. Compare that to the nights when you scroll till your thumb cramps and then collapse. One feels like a lullaby, the other like a hangover before you've even touched alcohol. The routine is the difference. And yes, routines can be boring. That's the point. The best parts of your life, health, creativity, relationships, grow not from dramatic gestures, but from quiet repetitions. You don't need to reinvent breakfast every morning. You just need to eat something that doesn't sabotage you. You don't need a new miracle workout each week. You just need to move your body in ways you can repeat. Here's the paradox. Routines create freedom. Artists from Maya Angelou to Haruki Murakami kept strict daily rituals. Wake, write, walk, rest. They weren't killing spontaneity. They were making space for it. Within their structured hours, creativity flourished because the mind wasn't wasting energy on indecision. The routine carried them until the spark arrived. You've probably felt it in small ways when you've had a Sunday ritual, maybe laundry and cleaning with some music, and it created calm for the whole week. Or when you had a bedtime sequence as a kid, story, blanket, light off. Even now, your body sighs at routine. It associates certain patterns with safety. That's why tonight, lying here, you feel your breath sync with the rhythm of the fan or the hum outside your window. Routine tells your nervous system, it's okay. You know what happens next. A quirky fact to amuse your sleep-drowsy mind. Some medieval monasteries rang bells as often as 7 or 8 times a day, signaling prayers, meals, work, and rest. The bells carved the day into predictable slices, like a cosmic Google Calendar with better acoustics. For the monks, that rhythm was liberation. They didn't fret about what to do next. The bell decided. And in that, they found peace. You can build your own bells. Not literal, though you could set chimes on your phone. But cues that tell your body and mind, this is what we do now. Coffee mug placed on the counter. Time to write. Shoes by the door. Time to walk. Blanket pulled up. Time to rest. These cues stitch your days together until life feels less like random fabric scraps and more like a quilt dot. So as you lie here, think gently of what routines already serve you, and which ones could. You don't need a full Franklin-style grid. You just need anchors, morning water, evening book, a walk after lunch, screens off before bed. The little rails that keep your train steady. Tomorrow you'll wake and maybe not feel motivated. That's fine. You'll lean into your rails. You'll follow the track your routine laid down, and it will carry you when your mood won't. That's the secret. You don't need daily fireworks. You just need the hum of repetition. And repetition, over time, becomes identity. You're not someone who tries to be disciplined. You're simply the person who does what they do. Your body softens further. Your mind quiets. Routines don't steal your freedom. They give you the peace of knowing you're already moving, even while the world sleeps. The night is carrying you now, almost like a raft sliding on still water. Your breath is slow, steady, and your mind wants to wander, but that's the point tonight. Distractions, you know them. You've been ambushed by them all day. The glowing, rectangle whispering, check me, the mental replay of awkward conversations, the lure of snacks you don't need. Distractions are like tiny mosquitoes. At a picnic one isn't a problem, but a swarm will have you flailing in minutes. You already sense the danger. You sit down to work and suddenly find yourself Googling whether penguins have knees. They do, by the way, hidden under feathers. 10 minutes lost. Then another 30 down a rabbit hole. By the time you remember the task, you've burned an hour. That's the modern curse. Distraction masquerading as curiosity. History smiles knowingly. Even before smartphones, people fought distractions. In ancient libraries, monks complained about their own wandering attention. Marginal notes survive. Scribes doodled cats and dragons in holy manuscripts, proof that even in candlelit silence, the brain would rather play. Historians still debate whether those doodles were rebellion, boredom, or simple fun, but either way, monks in the 12th century were basically scrolling the medieval equivalent of memes. And quirky fact, the Pomodoro technique, now popular with students and coders, was invented in the 1980s by an Italian named Francesco Cirillo, using a tomato-shaped kitchen timer. He found that working in short sprints with breaks hacked his brain into staying focused. Tomato magic. You can imagine him in his kitchen, hearing the tick-tick-tick of the tomato, deciding that maybe the mind just likes games. You, lying in the soft dark, can use similar tricks. Distractions don't disappear by force. They retreat with structure. Time blocking. For example, you dedicate specific windows for tasks, instead of hoping focus appears randomly. You schedule distraction to permission to scroll, snack, wander so it stops sneaking in. Like a toddler, your mind behaves better when it knows recess is coming. But not all distractions are external. Some are mental loops. You try to sleep, and suddenly you're replaying that thing you said 3 years ago at a party. Or imagining every possible future outcome of tomorrow's meeting, complete with sound effects. Distraction isn't always flashy. Sometimes it's just the hum of anxiety in your head. That's where mindfulness steps in, not mystical, just practical. You notice the thought, label it gently worrying, and let it float past like a cloud. You don't swat it, you let it drift. Think of your attention as a stage. Without training, every random thought rushes on with a trumpet, demanding applause. With practice, you become the director. You decide who gets the spotlight, who waits backstage. That's the art of managing distractions, not eliminating noise, but curating it. There's another piece of history humming here. Blaise Pascal, the French philosopher in the 1600s, claimed that all of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. Historians argue whether he was exaggerating, but you feel the sting of truth. Even tonight, lying still, you sense the itch to fill silence with something. Sitting quietly is its own discipline. You've already tested it. When you've left your phone in another room, suddenly the world sharpens. You notice the sound of wind, the weight of your body, the hum of appliances. You reconnect to reality. That's what managing distractions gives you, presence. Without it, you're a puppet pulled by every notification string. With it, you're the puppeteer, choosing where to look. And let's be honest, distractions aren't evil. Sometimes they're fun, even necessary. You need relief, laughter, cat videos. The trick is dosage. A distraction in the right place is spice. Too much is indigestion. You don't quit them. You master them. So tomorrow, when the screen flashes, or your brain shouts, penguin knees. You'll smile, breathe, and decide. Not react, but choose. Maybe you'll use a timer. Maybe a notebook where you park stray thoughts to handle later. Small tools, but powerful. Tonight, you practice the simplest one, focusing on your breath. Inhale, exhale, the gentle rise and fall. A thought appears. You smile at it, then let it go. Your stage, your spotlight, your call. And in that small act, you reclaim your freedom from the circus of distractions. Your body softens more deeply. The raft of night carries you farther. Tomorrow will bring more pings, more wandering thoughts, more temptations. But tonight, you've practiced calm, attention, and that practice is the seed of peace. The night air feels thick and honeyed, your body stretched into the mattress, like wax melting into its mold. You've tiptoed through distractions, and now the theme changes again toward little challenges, the incremental ones, not the Everest climbs of life, but the hills you can take on before breakfast, the small weights that, over time, make your willpower less like a fragile balloon and more like a seasoned muscle dot. You know the trap of going too big too soon. One day you're fired up, declaring you'll run 5 miles every morning at 5 a.m. The next, you're sleeping through alarms, clutching a croissant, wondering why the fantasy died so fast. Incremental challenges fix that. They don't demand heroic leaps. They whisper, do one small thing today, 10 push-ups, to pages written, one cold shower that feels like a slap from Poseidon himself. You survive, and tomorrow you do a bit more. History loves this principle. The Spartan warriors, famous for their grit, didn't start as unbreakable fighters. From childhood, they trained in gradual steps, small endurance tests, controlled hardships, lessons in hunger and fatigue. Incremental pressure shaped their legendary resilience. Historians still debate whether the Spartan system was genius training or state-sponsored cruelty. But the truth stands. Strength is forged step by step, not overnight. A quirky fact, to tickle your drifting mind. In the 19th century, one strongman named Milo of Croton allegedly trained by carrying a newborn calf on his shoulders every day. As the calf grew into a bull, his strength grew too. Whether or not that story is fully true, it captures the secret. Incremental weight becomes monumental power when repeated. You've already done this in your own life, even if you didn't notice. Think about how you learn to type, to ride a bike, to cook without burning every pan. Not from one grand lesson, but from tiny repetitions, small embarrassments, steady progress. You built your competence like a mason laying bricks, one at a time. And here's where discipline joins the dance. Incremental challenges don't feel sexy. They feel humble, sometimes even silly. Drinking a glass of water, going to bed 10 minutes earlier, standing instead of scrolling. But stack enough of these, and suddenly your life shifts. The best part, you don't burn out. You grow stronger without collapsing. Of course, you need fuel too. Willpower doesn't thrive in a body running on fumes. Sleep, nutrition, and movement aren't luxuries. They're the gym equipment for your mind. You know what happens when you skimp. Your patience shrinks, your cravings roar, your self-control cracks. Incremental challenges paired with rest keep you balanced. Imagine Milo carrying that calf on no sleep and bad bread. It wouldn't end well. So you practice gentleness with yourself. Push, yes, but also pause. If you miss a step, you don't spiral, you resume tomorrow. The point of small challenges is their forgiving nature. Miss 10 push-ups one day. Do them the next. Forget a glass of water. Drink till later. The scale is kind because the steps are small, and you can make them playful. Want to train your attention? Challenge yourself to leave your phone in another room for 10 minutes. Want to test patience? Wait 1 minute before replying to every text. Want to build resilience? End your shower with 15 seconds of cold water. None of these make headlines, but together they stack like Milo's calf. Here's the paradox. You smile at in the dark. The smaller the challenge, the bigger the chance you'll keep it. Ambition whispers for grandeur. Wisdom whispers for gradualism. The butterfly lifts with tiny wing beats, not one giant flap. Your mind drifts back to the body now. You notice how tired muscles beg for sleep, how your chest rises, falls, rises. Again, even here, you're practicing. Every slow breath is a rep for calm. Every thought released is another calf lifted. Incremental, steady. Enough. Tomorrow, you'll wake and maybe forget about Milo's ball or Spartan boys, but you'll remember the whisper. Do one small thing. That's how transformation sneaks in, not by storm, but by steps. You'll smile at the quiet power of accumulation, the way tiny ripples carve whole rivers. And tonight, as you surrender, you trust that each little effort builds the stronger you. The room feels like velvet now, so soft and quiet that even your thoughts hesitate before stepping in. But you know what else creeps in at night, when your guard is low? Burnout, procrastination, those shadows of discipline that sneak behind you and whisper, maybe tomorrow. You've felt them both, the weariness of trying too hard for too long, and the avoidance of not trying at all. Different disguises, same thief, they both rob you of your peace. Let's start with burnout. It isn't just being tired, it's the flavorless soup of exhaustion, cynicism, and the sense that nothing you do matters anymore. You've seen it in yourself or in friends, someone who once cared deeply, now moving like a ghost through tasks. Burnout is the tax you pay when you confuse discipline with punishment, when you forget to rest, when you run on fumes, because you think stopping makes you weak. History leaves a note in the margin. In the early 1970s, psychologist Herbert Freudenberger coined the term burnout after watching overworked doctors collapse under stress. He compared them to buildings consumed by fire, reduced to ashes. Historians still argue whether burnout is a modern invention or an ancient condition renamed, but the feeling is universal. Even monks in medieval Europe wrote laments about spiritual dryness days, when prayer felt empty, when their duties became heavy chains. Burnout has been around, it just changes costumes. Quirky fact to slip into your dream state. In 19th century Paris, fashionable doctors used to prescribe rest cures for stressed patients, sending them to bed for weeks with strict instructions to avoid mental strain. Imagine lying in lace sheets 4 days while someone spoon feeds you broth, all because you worried too much. Sounds luxurious, but many patients hated it. Turns out, the cure for exhaustion isn't always to stop everything. It's to restore balance, not erase life. Now tilt the lens to procrastination. It's the cousin of burnout, showing up not when you're empty, but when you're overwhelmed or afraid. You tell yourself, I'll start later, as though later were a magical country where you suddenly become perfect. Later never comes. You've padded entire afternoons with excuses, pushing tasks around your mind like peas on a plate. You delay and delay, and then the guilt of not starting becomes heavier than the task itself. The science behind it is oddly comforting. Procrastination isn't laziness, it's emotion regulation. Your brain avoids tasks that spark discomfort, so it gives you with distraction instead. The email feels scary. Let's reorganize the sock drawer. The essay feels huge. Let's watch one more video about raccoons stealing cat food. You aren't broken, you're protecting yourself. But the protection costs more than the task. So, how do you dance between burnout and procrastination without tripping? You practice balance. You build breaks into discipline like windows into a stone wall. You learn to spot the signs when every task feels heavy, when your sleep is shallow, when your patience evaporates at small annoyances. That's burnout knocking. And when you find yourself tidying the kitchen instead of writing the report, that's procrastination waving. Both are signals, not failures. The antidotes are surprisingly gentle. For burnout, rest that restores. A walk in sunlight, not a 3-day collapse. A conversation with someone who reminds you you're more than your work. A recalibration of goals, so you're not sprinting a marathon. For procrastination, shrink the task. Don't write the novel, open the document. Don't clean the household. One shirt. Small steps trick the brain into starting. And once you start, momentum takes over. And maybe, just maybe, you give yourself kindness. You remember that discipline isn't about grinding yourself into dust. It's about sustaining. You remind yourself that everyone, from Spartan warriors to Franklin with his charts, had off days. You chuckle in the dark knowing even monks doodled when they should have been copying scripture. Perfection isn't the goal, persistence is. So tonight you let the blanket hold you. You let the air remind you that rest is part of the process, not an interruption. You whisper to yourself, it's okay to pause. It's okay to begin again. Tomorrow, when procrastination flirts or burnout growls, you'll respond not with shame, but with small steps, soft adjustments, human patience, because the truth is, you don't conquer burnout and procrastination once and for all. You learn to notice them, dance with them, and steer gently back toward balance. And lying here now, you're already practicing. You've chosen rest without shame. That's the first, bravest step. Your breath is slow, your body already surrendered to the mattress, but your mind is still walking gently, lazily through the fields of thought. You've seen burnout's shadow and procrastination's tricks, and now the next doorway opens, growth. Not the Instagram version with neon slogans, but the quiet mindset that turns every stumble into a step. Think of it this way. Some people live as if their abilities are stone statues, fixed, unmoving, destined never to change. That's the fixed mindset. You miss a shot in basketball. Proof you'll never be athletic. You fail a test. Evidence you're stupid forever. The fixed mindset loves to carve insults in granite. But the growth mindset, Carol Dweck's great contribution to psychology, sees ability like clay, soft, moldable, ready to be reshaped. Fail a shot, practice more, flunk a test, learn differently. Clay, not granite. Historians still argue whether humans naturally lean toward one mindset or the other, or if society builds it into us. But either way, you've felt both. You've had moments where you declared, I just can't do this, as though the universe wrote it into your DNA. And you've had other moments where you surprised yourself, thinking, wait, I didn't know I could get better at this. Both stories live inside you. A quirky little fact to amuse your drowsy brain. Thomas Edison, while developing the light bulb, famously tested thousands of filaments before finding the one that worked. Reporters asked if he felt like a failure. He shrugged and said, I've simply found thousands of ways that don't work. That's growth mindset disguised as stubborn tinkering. He wasn't counting failures. He was stacking lessons. And you can see the difference in your own life. Fixed mindset whispers, don't try, you might embarrass yourself. Growth mindset laughs softly. Try anyway, you'll learn. Fixed mindset keeps you safe, but stagnant. Growth mindset nudges you into discomfort. Not to torture you, but to stretch you. Think of it as yoga for the brain. The pose feels awkward at first, maybe even impossible, but over time, you bend further than you thought. Discipline, the flame you've been tending all night, is the engine that powers this mindset. Without discipline, growth stays theoretical. You say you believe in learning but quit after 2 tries. With discipline, you practice long enough to see yourself evolve. It's the difference between giving up on a guitar because your fingers hurt and playing long enough to strum a song at a campfire. Growth blooms when discipline waters it. And the beauty. Failure loses its sting. With a growth mindset, you don't measure yourself against the flawless product. You measure yourself against yesterday. You stop asking, am I good? And start asking, am I better? That subtle shift takes you from despair to curiosity, from shame to play. History again. The painter Claude Monet was still reworking his water lily in his 80s, even when his eyesight dimmed. His fixed mindset peers might have said, you're too old, too blind. Monet said, I'll just keep painting differently. Some art historians argue, whether his later works were mistakes or masterpieces. But the truth is, he kept growing. That's the secret. Clay never stops being moldable. No matter your age, you smile at this in the darkness, remembering times you thought you were bad at math, or not creative, or too clumsy. Were you? Or were you simply clay you hadn't needed yet? The growth mindset invites you to soften those absolutes, to replace I can't with I can't yet. That tiny word, yet, is like opening a window in a stuffy room. Suddenly, there's air. And let's be honest, the growth mindset doesn't promise a frictionless journey. You'll still trip. You'll still mutter curses at stubborn problems. But instead of interpreting them as dead ends, you see them as detours. Frustration becomes information. Difficulty becomes teacher. That's the alchemy. Pain into progress. So, here, under the hush of night, you let your mind practice this shift. Every thought of I can't gets a soft addendum, yet, every failure replay turns into a rehearsal note. You stop carving insults in stone and start molding new shapes in clay. Tomorrow, when something resists you, a hard task, a clumsy attempt, a botched conversation, you'll smile quietly. You'll remember Edison's filaments, Monet's lily, your own clay-like self. You'll remind yourself that discipline is the brush and growth is the canvas. And you'll keep painting, even if the strokes are messy. That's the lullaby tonight. Not perfection, but possibility. Not statues, but clay. You are not finished. You are unfolding. The night feels cathedral quiet now, as though even the shadows have stopped moving. You're lying there, breathing slow, and you can almost hear the echo of centuries leaning in. Philosophy has always whispered about discipline, and tonight, those whispers gather around your pillow like patient storytellers. Seneca first. He sits in your imagination, robed in Roman calm, reminding you that life is short, and wasting it on impulse is the real tragedy. He wasn't a saint, he worked in politics, tangled in wealth, but his words are steady. If you can't master your desires, you're their servant. You picture him at a desk in dim candlelight, scribbling letters that he never meant to publish, coaching himself through temptation. Historians still argue whether Seneca lived up to his own Stoic advice or betrayed it in practice. But the beauty is that he wrestled with the same contradictions you do. Then Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who wanted only to be left alone with his thoughts. He carried the weight of Rome on his shoulders, but still carved out pages for meditations. Keep yourself simple. Stay in tune with nature. The image of a ruler whispering philosophy to himself at night makes you smile like a Roman emperor running a private bedtime podcast. His discipline wasn't flashy. It was survival in chaos. And then Nietzsche storms in, dramatically, with his wild hair and sharper pen. For him, discipline wasn't just calmness, it was power. Wills are matched, the will to power, not over others, but over yourself. He saw self-mastery as the engine of becoming, the way you hammer yourself into the stronger version of you. He makes you a little nervous, honestly, with his intensity. But beneath the thunder, there's the same theme, freedom through control. Kant joins quietly, tidy and methodical. The professor who walked his daily route so consistently that neighbors set their clocks by him. For him, discipline was duty, doing the right thing not because it feels good, but because it's right. A compass pointing north regardless of weather. Historians still debate whether his rigidity was admirable or obsessive, but you can feel the weight of his idea. Freedom isn't following every impulse. Freedom is obeying principles that make you trustworthy to yourself and others. And Aristotle rounds the circle, smiling like a patient tutor. He believed in balance, in virtue, as a golden mean between extremes. Too much indulgence is vice. Too much denial is vice. The discipline is finding harmony. His word for the good life was eudaimonia, flourishing, a life of purpose. You can almost hear him in the Lyceum, walking slowly, explaining that self-control isn't punishment, but a condition of joy. Quirky fact floats in here. Aristotle thought that chewing carefully mattered for moderation. He even speculated that overindulgence might make people sluggish in thought. Imagine the great philosopher lecturing on mastication technique, gently, nagging ancient Greeks not to wolf down olives. Philosophy gets funny in its details, but the point holds. Discipline, even in the small things, reflects into the whole. So many voices across centuries, yet their song rhymes. Discipline is not chains. It's a compass, a forge, a golden mean. Whether you listen to a Stoic in a toga, a German with a storm in his pen, a Prussian professor marching his daily loop, or an Athenian pacing under olive trees, they're all circling the same flame, been tending tonight. And you feel it, here in the hush. You are not the first to wrestle with impulses, with boredom, with the tug of distraction. Whole civilizations have pondered it, argued about it, built systems around it. And here you are, one more thinker in the lineage, lying under your blanket, carrying the thread. Tomorrow, when you feel weak, you'll remember Aurelius scribbling while Rome burned. When you feel impatient, you'll think of Kant's daily march. When you crave too much, Aristotle's golden balance will whisper. And when you feel powerless, Nietzsche's hammer will remind you to forge. You don't need to memorize their words. Just know, you're in their company. You're part of the same human experiment, how to live free by choosing discipline. The philosophers fade into the dark, like kind professors exiting the lecture hall. You breathe easier, comforted by their presence, softened by the thought that discipline isn't a lonely path, but an ancient one, walked by emperors, poets, and now by you. The night feels like it's folding inward, cocooning you in layers of stillness. You've walked with philosophers, felt the tug of Nietzsche's hammer and Aristotle's balance, and now you arrive at a subtler art, how to hold both detachment and connection in the same hand. Too much detachment, and you drift into cold exile. Too much connection, and you dissolve into everyone else's chaos. The harmony lies in that delicate middle ground. You know the extremes already. There are days you've built walls so high that even the people who love you couldn't peek over. And then there are days you've blurred so many boundaries that your mood was basically dictated by someone else's text tone. Neither feels free, both drain you. Balance. Though balance feels like standing at the shoreline, waves brushing your feet, but not sweeping you away. History leaves its fingerprints here too. The Stoics preached detachment, yes, but even Marcus Aurelius spent nights comforting his soldiers. He didn't vanish into pure philosophy. He carried Rome's grief in his heart. Meanwhile, Buddhist teachings remind you to practice compassion, without clinging to love others fully, while not binding your peace to their every move. Historians still argue whether these traditions overlap by coincidence or influence, but either way, they both point to the same horizon, connection with boundaries, a quirky image to float in your half-dreaming mind. 18th century salons in Paris, where intellectuals gathered to debate ideas over wine and cakes. They practiced connection-spirited discussion, shared laughter, but they also had a ritual of polite exit. You could leave the circle whenever you wished, and no one clung. Imagine applying that to modern group chats, leaving quietly without guilt, trusting the conversation will roll on. Balance means setting borders with kindness. You don't slam doors, you gently close them. You don't vanish from people, you step back when needed. Connection without detachment smothers. Detachment without connection starves. The middle ground nourishes. You care, you empathize, you show up, but you don't let another person's storm sink your ship. And that middle space also includes self-care. When you take time to rest, to be alone, to listen to your own compass, you're not betraying others. You're tending your core so you can return steadier, kinder. Boundaries aren't selfish. They're generous, because they keep you capable of giving without collapse. You've seen it in your own life relationships, where you overgave until you burned out. Friendships where you withdrew so far the connection cracked. Both taught you that balance isn't automatic, it's cultivated. It's saying, I love you, but I need this hour to myself. It's saying, I'll listen, but I won't drown with you. That is discipline to the discipline of the heart. And let's not forget uncertainty. Life doesn't hand you neat rules on how much to detach from the net. You wobble. Sometimes you lean too far into isolation, sometimes too far into dependency. But maybe the wobble is the point. Balance isn't a frozen statue. It's constant micro-adjustments, like riding a bike. The art is in noticing, correcting gently, and moving forward. Your breath rises, falls. You picture yourself as a tree, roots deep in the soil of your own peace, branches reaching outward to others. If you neglect roots, the tree topples. If you never stretch branches, it withers. Both matter. Both belong. So tomorrow, when someone demands too much of you, you'll breathe, set a boundary with compassion. When you feel tempted to vanish into total detachment, you'll remind yourself to reach back out. This dance between holding and letting go isn't meant to be perfect. It's meant to be alive. Here in the night, you rest in that paradox. Connected yet free, caring yet calm, attached yet detached. You don't need to master it tonight. You only need to remember it's possible. And that memory itself softens you towards sleep. The quiet is almost absolute now. The kind that feels like velvet against your skin. You've walked through sparks, flames, cocoons, philosophies, and balance, and now you're here at the gentle ending. It's time to gather the threads together and lay them down like a quilt. You've learned that systems matter more than single goals, that the steady hum of daily acts outweighs any heroic burst. That's the secret. The rhythm of discipline is what carries you, not the fireworks of motivation. Think back across your own path. When you've stumbled, it wasn't because you lacked desire, it was because desire flickers. When you've grown, it wasn't because of one triumphant day, but because of little systems. The way you brushed your teeth neatly as a kid, the way you kept showing up to school even when you didn't want to, the way you paid bills on time, because the system nudged you. Systems are the scaffolding. They hold you steady when your willpower shakes. History leans close one last time. James Clear, the modern thinker who wrote about habits, echoed what Aristotle, Seneca, and even monks before him knew: systems outlast goals. A goal is a milestone, but a system is a path. Historians in the future may debate whether our obsession with habits was cultural fad or wisdom rediscovered. But tonight it feels eternal. We are what we repeat. And here's the quirky little whisper. In the 20th century, factory engineers discovered that even machines lasted longer when given small, regular tune-ups instead of waiting for catastrophic breakdowns. Humans are the same. Tiny steps, tiny resets, tiny routines, they keep you from crumbling. You don't wait for the engine of your life to collapse. You oil it daily. So you smile in the darkness, remembering all those tiny steps. One page read, one glass of water, one pause before reacting. None of them felt dramatic, but stacked together, they made you steady. The flame of discipline isn't about shouting at yourself, it's about tending small fires that never go out. Now, as your body drifts towards sleep, you feel that steady hum. You don't need to conquer the world tomorrow. You don't need to wake up a hero. You only need to take one small step again. One more page, one more breath, one more act of kindness to yourself. Systems, not goals. Persistence, not perfection. Peace, not pressure. And so the story ends where it began, with you, lying in the quiet, body soft, mind gentled by philosophy that sounds like a lullaby. You've carried sparks, you've carried weights, you've carried questions, and now you can put them down. Sleep is part of the system too. The night has stretched itself long and slow, and you've reached the end of the path. The voices of philosophers, the whispers of psychology, the soft images of history, they're all quiet now, folded away like books on a shelf. What lingers is not the noise of lessons, but the softness of rhythm, the steady flame. You've seen how discipline isn't chains but wings, how routines can free you, how small steps carry more weight than grand declarations. You've touched the idea of balance between caring and detaching, between pushing and resting, and you've noticed that systems, those tiny, ordinary repetitions, are the true foundation. Not dazzling goals, not one-night transformations, but the hum of persistence. And so as you lie here, your breath slow, your body heavy, you realize you don't have to be anyone else tonight. You don't have to solve everything. You only have to keep walking the path of small acts, returning when you wander, forgiving when you fail. That rhythm is enough. Tomorrow will bring its distractions, its temptations, its unexpected turns, but you'll have your compass, clear goal softened by routines, guarded by discipline, warmed by compassion. You'll have your systems, quiet habits like lanterns marking the way. You'll have your calm, not a detachment from life, but a steady freedom within it. So now you exhale, you let the day dissolve. You surrender to rest, knowing the systems you've built will carry you forward, step by step, flame by flame. The story is finished, but your journey continues quieter, stronger, steadier.